The Australian Prime Minister. Thanks very much for the update. And something that has international overtones, but within the United States, the reinstatement of the U.S. Export-Import Bank is being met with some tough criticism. In 4 months, the fate of the bank will go up for a vote. Right now, Republicans are split on the decision, some saying it's a form of corporate welfare, while others believe the bank helps small business compete in foreign markets by providing risk protection and extending credit to buyers. Now, in an interview with the Heritage Foundation, the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Jeb Hinsarling, Republican of Texas, had this to say.
It is a bad idea. It always has been. XM, regrettably, is really in many respects the face of cronyism. It is where government bureaucrats come in and start to allocate credit, pick winners and losers. You know, you either believe that free enterprise is a good thing or you don't believe free enterprise is a good thing.
And I tend to weigh in with Jeb Hinsarling right there, but I'm pleased to have an old friend join us right now. Hard to believe that a few years ago some bloggers thought we might be on a national ticket together, but that was then, this is now. Joining us, a proponent of the XM Bank restoration, former United States Senator and former Virginia Governor George Allen. George, it's good to have you here on America's Forum. Welcome, sir.
It's great to be with you, J.D. I always consider you a teammate.
Well, you know, teammates from time to time will disagree. I got to tell you.
Yeah, and I like Jeb too. And look, I think most people would be for American jobs and American manufacturers being able to compete internationally, and that's what this XM Bank allows, and it allows us to compete. So much of our manufacturing in our country deals with consumers who are outside the United States, and it's not as if the government picks winners or losers. It's the consumers, and it may be someone in Europe or maybe someone in Asia or South America, and we're competing with manufacturers from European countries as well as from Asian countries, and this simply allows them to get a credit facility that allows them to actually sell an American-made product and help out literally hundreds of thousands of United States workers. And we like things made in the USA rather than made in China or somewhere else. And beyond all that, the taxpayers benefit from it. It's not as if it's any subsidy. It actually makes money. And in fact, $1 billion was returned just last year to help offset the deficit spending in Washington. So it's to me, it's something that works. And I'm one who got motivated, J.D., to get involved in organized politics by Ronald Reagan, who in 1986, when it was being reauthorized then, he said, and I quote, "It sends an important signal to both our exporting community and to foreign suppliers that American exporters will continue to be able to compete vigorously for business throughout the world."
Well,
and
George,
I think
on the other
President Reagan was right then, and those words ring true today.
George, on the other side of this, Jeb Hinsarling calls this, quote, the face of cronyism. Others say when you strip everything away, in essence, you're giving foreigners tax money, American tax money, to import stuff from the U.S. Now, is there a grain of truth in that? What are we missing, George?
I think what you're missing is that what it is it's almost you could look at the XM Bank as a lender of last resort. Smaller companies and some larger companies as well may have a hard time getting credit, or whoever the purchaser is, more importantly, has a hard time getting credit. So this is a lender of last resort. The purchaser has to pay this bank, this XM Bank. And it's not as if we're the only ones in the world who try to help out our own manufacturers. There's dozens and dozens of competitors who support their own indigenous industries and manufacturers. But the point is that they pay it back, and they have to pay, and it costs the taxpayers not a single penny. It's not as if the United States says to a company in, let's say, Colombia, that you must buy this American-made product. They'd like to buy an American-made product, which may be competing with one that could be made in Europe, it could be made in Brazil. It might be made in China. All those other countries would be subsidizing in a variety of ways, or helping their domestic manufacturer if the U.S. doesn't at least help out with the financing of it, and it being a backstop in effect for it, then the U.S. manufacturer won't be able to sell that product into Colombia. So it's not anything that does anything other than help our exports around the world and therefore support American jobs here at home.
Well, Governor, another issue we want to get to with you real quickly in light of the recent NRA convention as well, is Mayor Bloomberg's $50 million campaign to fight guns. How important are gun rights in this upcoming election cycle 2014?
Well, it's what we're talking about here is the natural right of self-defense, which is embodied in our Second Amendment of our Constitution. That is just one of the basic liberties, along with obviously freedom of religion and freedom of expression and private ownership of property and due process and equal protection. And so I think gun rights are very important to families and to individuals. I just was involved in a primary we had in Virginia over the weekend in the 10th Congressional District, and Barbara Comstock, who's a delegate, will be our nominee, and it's going to be a close race. Mayor Bloomberg, in her state legislative race last year, put in $100,000, and that's a lot of money in a
that is a lot of money. Now, Bloomberg's promise to spend $50 million, to counter what the NRA traditionally gets accused of doing. Do you think that money is going to make a difference? You talked about the money that he spent on Barbara Comstock. What about in other races as well?
It could. We need to be on guard. You could say, well, gosh, people will naturally think that the Second Amendment is an important part of our Bill of Rights and our natural right of self-defense, but it is. You can be assured that they will run negative ads. Heck, they ran negative ads against me when I was running for the Senate. The other tricky thing to understand that what they'll do is they may not run an ad. They're not going to run an ad say, we're going to take away your right to protect yourself and your family. They'll come up with ads that are deceptive, deceitful, and diverting from what their effort is. And to some extent, they may not even talk about guns directly. It'll be just a lot of money that'll be negative ads against those who believe in the Second Amendment and our right of self-defense. And so it's going to be a lot of money, and we need to be aware of it. And I think this election, just like any election, is controlled by those who show up. The turnout will be less, though, this year than it was in 2012 when President Obama was not at the top of the ticket, and it may be an election year similar to 2010. And I think that certainly is gun rights, jobs, energy policy, regulations. All of those will be really important issues in
George,
this upcoming election, and obviously repealing Obamacare and reforming it with market-based, patient-centered reforms.
Now, George, let me turn away from policies of the NRA convention to another of the personalities. Governor Sarah Palin was there, giving a speech that was red meat and that pleased those in attendance. What about Sarah? Do you think she's going to run for public office again? And is her endorsement the endorsement that carries the day? Is that the badge of honor these days?
I don't know what she's going to do. She hasn't let me know. She hasn't let anyone know. I know she certainly fired up a lot of folks in the 2008 election, and she's a force and obviously has influence. It's hard to say how much endorsements matter. They may matter probably more in the midst of intra-squad scrimmages and primaries than they maybe do in the general elections. But clearly she's a force and has a lot of influence. But I don't know if she'll run herself again or not. I think that most people, when they go to vote, look at the candidates that they're choosing from and would love to be motivated to be for someone. And I think that's one of the things that we as conservatives need to do is put forward positive, constructive solutions that will improve opportunities for people in their lives, whether it's their jobs, whether it's the competitiveness of our country, whether it's our national security. I think energy policy. If people don't understand the blessings of American energy, where we have more than any other country in the world. We have a government that looks at it as a curse. Meanwhile, you have Russia with all the leverage they have over Europe, so that Europe's limited in what they could do insofar as Europe
George,
or the
George,
Ukraine.
we got about a minute
and
left.
Here we want to stop a pipeline from our neighbor and friends.
Well, let me just ask you this. The main straw poll over the weekend, Rand Paul wins that almost by a 2-to-1 margin over Ted Cruz. Your take on Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, possible candidates in 2016? About 30 seconds to answer, if you could, please, sir. Sorry about that.
That's not enough time to go through all the candidates who might run. I think all of those are candidates who may run. I'm partial to people who have been governor because they've governed, and I think that's good executive experience. I think the best ideas are going to come from the states rather than the federal government.
Well,
I'm one who likes Mike Pence a great deal.
Oh, good. Mike Pence is a good guy. I served with him. Spoken like a former governor who was also a former senator. George Allen, we thank you for your input. Look forward to our next visit. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Mike.